comes to the tariffs, we look at the GCC countries, and first of all, they've been given exceptional treatment, concessions on the tariff rates and all of that. And more importantly, hydrocarbons are exempted from that tariffs, and being mainly an oil exporting region, so the main exports are exempted from that. And on a second note to this, if you look at the UAE, for example, there is very little that's being exported to the US. So out of the entire UAE, GDP of more than $500 billion, only around $7.2 billion worth of exports are being directed to the USA. So the impact of that, the straightforward impact of that would be minimal. When we go to the oil prices, now that's a very tricky subject that needs to be addressed mainly on three different pillars. First of all, we can look at, for example, Saudi. They produce around 9 million barrels per day. So with a quick calculation, assuming a $10 drop in oil prices, we are looking at $30 billion worth of additional burden to their fiscal budget that could widen the deficit, etc. But it's not as simple as that, because on one side, which is the second pillar, oil price or oil mainly is the main input to a lot of industries. It affects real estate, it affects manufacturing. So a decline in oil prices would reflect positively on the cost of production of these industries. So whatever is being lost in oil revenues can be sort of compensated and made up for in terms of cost to the other industry. A decline in oil prices, some countries, mainly in the GCC, are offering subsidies for their consumers on gas prices and all of that. So a decline in oil prices would also result in some relief on these subsidies on the government's part. The strategy of the UAE government over the past years was to diversify their revenues and income away from oil, or minimize the contribution of oil. So while oil was a few years back representing 60% of state revenues, now it's down to 40%, and it only represents around 25% of the UAE's GDP, which tells you that diversification here minimizes the impact of such fluctuations. Any large investment or any large exposure, be it selling oil or deploying some capital in a certain project or sector, requires a lot of analysis and a lot of planning, and first and foremost is risk management. So we sit and analyze the risk and identify the key risks that are going or are probably going to impact or affect this project or investment, and make sure that these risks are duly addressed, analyzed, and mitigated. So I don't expect there will be any significant sort of changes in the plans or in IPOs or in deploying any projects. This is, oil price fluctuation or similar market movements are, constitute mainly the nature of any economic environment. It's just down to the investor or the government to make sure that these risks are duly mitigated and addressed before any capital is being deployed. We're in regular contact with our customers, be it the governments or key public sector entities in the market, and any long-term plans as such would have to continue. Like if you talk to any of the state-owned airlines, mainly their investment plans are, first and foremost would be acquiring new aircrafts. And this is not a decision that is made overnight. This is an order that's probably placed 4 or 5 years ago, and substantial payments have been made to the OEM supplier, and there are delivery dates that are planned. So again, unless there are significant market changes, these plans would continue as initially intended. In general terms, if you take airlines, for example, their component in terms of operating costs would be aviation fuel, and it's a typical approach to have a good portion of that input hedge. Hedging has different ways. They can use, swaps. They can use forward contracts. They're using options. A blend of different techniques. Very specific treasury products are being designed to cater for that. A very well-studied hedging strategy is being implemented, and part of that strategy is leaving a portion that is unhedged to benefit from the downside when oil prices decline. Then that unhedged portion is the one that benefits from the decline. We do offer a wide range of products and services, from balance sheet products, working capital facilities, term loan, project finance. And in addition to that, obviously, there are our treasury and global market products, which assists our customers to hedge against different market fluctuations, be it on the commodity side, on the currency side, and with regular contact engagement and positive advice, we are ready to help our customers as and when there is a requirement. These customers, the governments, the public sector entities are very well geared and prepared for these changes. Risk management does not happen post-fact. Risk management is, ideally structured and strategized in very stable market conditions, accounting for what kind of risks that could potentially materialize, needs to be quantified and addressed in a scientific manner. And through the regular engagement with banks such as Mashreq, the customers are able to put in place strategies and products and plans to hedge in the event any of these risks materialize. They are protected to the extent they want. And when you look at it on the public sector side, there is no major sort of commodity or product that is being exported to the US. Granted, there are other entities, smaller entities, or maybe private sector entities that have different products that are being sold there, and I think it's a bit early to judge how much of that will be passed over to their customers over there, how much is going to be absorbed by the exporter, depending on each specific product and the availability of substitutes in the US and the cost of such substitutes. Lots of moving parts that will affect this decision. I think when we look at this kind of changes in the market, the most important thing is not to panic, and we need to address things for what they really are, with a clear knowledge of or understanding of how fiscal budgets work. So fiscal budget is an annual financial plan for a certain government, and this plan is probably part of a much longer vision or a much longer term view on where this specific government intends to take the country in terms of various onshore and offshore investments, development in specific sectors and areas. So it's not something that needs to be adjusted on a daily or weekly basis depending on where the market is. The plan is laid down at the beginning of the year. These are the certain expenditures pertaining to the government, certain investments in a number of projects. These are our revenues and sources of income. That's how we're going to balance the budget, whether we have surplus, deficit. This is the deficit. Deficit is going to be covered by sovereign borrowing, be it from the loan market or from the bonds and sukuk, the capital market. And once there are fluctuations and changes and different dynamic movements in the market, governments obviously keep a close watch on that. And in terms of reaction, unless there is a long-term impact, I don't see any immediate response required, or granted throughout the year, if there is a prolonged or extended sort of decline in oil price for a government that is essentially depending on oil for its revenues, then maybe some correctional measures will have to be made either on the investment side. Some plans may be delayed or changed, or project size can be changed, but I don't see any necessity for a knee-jerk reaction.